Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 2025 Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Now, this tournament is the first top classical event that starts every year. Now, in this tournament, it is a classical time control tournament. There are many top players participating in it, including like Magnus Carlsen, like Gukesh Damaraju, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, and many more players. And in this year's Tata Steel Chess Tournament, even though Magnus he didn't participate this time, but there are still many other top players, including the reigning world chess champion Gukesh Damaraju. There's also Fabiano Caruana, Arjun Erigaisi, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, and many more. Now, the Tata Steel Chess Tournament is the 87th edition of the Wimbledon of Chess, a classical tournament previously won by world champions. And now we can see these are the players that are going to be participating in this year's Tata Steel Chess Tournament. You guys can quickly scan the names, and they are the players who will be participating in the Masters section. Now, the tournament will take place in Wikkenzie, the Netherlands. Like it always did. Every year it is always in Wikkenzie. In the tournament, the format is a 14-player round robin. The time control is 100 minutes for 40 moves, 50 minutes for the rest of the game with a 30-second increment per move from move 1. Now, this just means that this is a really, really long time control where a game can go on for hours and hours. Now, this tournament, at the time I'm recording this video, has already started for 5 rounds. And after 5 rounds, Nodirbek Abdusattorov from Uzbekistan has surged to the top of the leaderboard. Well, is he an underdog? Of course he is not. He is a bona fide top-tier player. Many of you might still remember his remarkable performance at the World Rapid Chess Championship, where he defeated Magnus Carlsen to claim the world title. And besides that, he also has many other really impressive results. I also recall how upon returning to his homeland, to Uzbekistan, he was personally honored and awarded by the president of Uzbekistan. It's such a proud moment, a great moment, and honestly, I envy countries that place such a high value on chess because if you guys don't know that when Ding won the world champion, like when he became world champion and then he came back to China, basically it's just like nothing happened. There are no there's no awards, basically no huge awards or nothing basically. But anyways, that is just my some stories. But speaking of Uzbekistan, there are several highly anticipated tournaments scheduled for early March. And I have actually been planning to participate in some of these events, including an open women's tournament that I've been very eager to participate in. But after thinking for a long time, however, discussing with my mom when I was discussing this with my mom a couple of days ago, she didn't agree to it. She believes I need more training to improve my skills before competing abroad. She also pointed out that we shouldn't increase our family expenses unnecessarily. Although I was a bit upset because I really want to participate in that tournament, but I understood her reasoning and even somewhat agreed. So I'll just focus on improving my abilities, and also I have a really, really important tournament upcoming in February where it's for kids, for us kids. It's like a group tournament where I'm participating in the girls 14 group. But anyways, so I'm going to be focusing on improving my abilities for now and aim to perform well in domestic tournaments first. All right. I think I'm getting off topic a little bit, but let's go back to Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Although only 5 rounds have been played, it's still too early to determine the final winner. The upcoming games are, of course, going to be even more thrilling since these top-tier players are incredibly close in skill level. Until the very last moment, no one can predict who the winner is going to be. Now today, we're going to be focusing on analyzing the games of this brilliant Uzbekistan prodigy, and I hope you guys enjoy it. He had 2 draws and 3 wins in the first 5 rounds, and today we're going to be taking a look at those 3 wins that he had. The draws, well, you guys can actually take a look at them, because I won't be covering these 2 games in this video. But anyways, I'm going to be covering the games that he had won, and this is round 2 where he is playing against Leo Mendonca Luke from India. Now, even though his opponent, who is playing with the black pieces, is the lowest rated player in the Masters section, but I mean, if you have the opportunity to play in the Masters section, then of course you are a really strong player. But maybe if you're comparing his 2639 rating points to Nodirbek's 2768, rating points, probably there's a big gap, but still he is not Leon is not a easy opponent to play against. All right, but anyways, Nodirbek here is with the white pieces, and he starts with e4, and we have the French defense: d5, e5, c5, c3, knight c6, knight f3, queen b6, and here normally we go a3, right? This is a line, this is the main line that all of us know. We go a3 because we are going to be preparing to go b4 if black takes. And I mean, even if black doesn't take, we're going to be going b4 with a3 supporting b4. But in the game, however, instead of playing a3 or just other really normal bishop e2, bishop d3 developing moves, here Nodirbek decided to play this a4 move, which is kind of an opening surprise. a4 is a move that we don't see a lot in the French. Of course, I think this is definitely in Nodirbek's home preparation, and he prepared a4, surprising his opponent, and his opponent here spent 9 minutes thinking and then took on d4. Not the best move. Here, the best move is actually just to develop with bishop d7. Even a6 is possible. C takes d4 is not the best line here because it just simply, well, in the game, however, Nodirbek, he didn't play the best move a5, which is a possible idea, but instead he played c takes d4. I mean, these are not really bad moves, but just small inaccuracies, and I guess both are now out of their home preparation. Okay, maybe Nodirbek is still in his home preparation, but a4 must have really surprised his opponent. Now here, his opponent started to make mistakes. He played knight h6. Now this is a move that happens a lot in the French defense for black, because black is threatening to go knight f5 to pressure the d4 pawn. But this is not where it should be played, not the best moment. Here, the engine suggests that black develops this knight this way with knight g7, because simply, if you go knight h6 here, there's just bishop takes h6, and if you take on h6, now even though in the main line where white plays a3, and black goes knight h6, white also has the chance to take on h6, but usually doesn't do that because it's not good. Then why can white take on h6 at this point? Well, the main difference is that white played a4 instead of a3 and now has this bishop b5 move. The pawn defends the bishop, and the bishop creates this really annoying pin, which, I mean, could cause a lot of trouble for black. Probably black goes something like bishop d7, but now white is much faster in development after short castle. Black can only choose to go long castle, maybe now, but then knight c3, white is going to be really fast on the queenside attack. So going back into the game, well, however, instead of taking on h6, Nodirbek here decided to play bishop b5 with a few minutes think, and I think knight h6 definitely surprised him. Bishop b5 is not bad, and in the game knight f5 was played, knight c3, because, well, here, you see the difference now is that a4 supports bishop b5, whereas if you play a3, there's no bishop b5 ideas. Bishop d7 was played, short castle, a6, kicking this bishop, and now of course you take, because if you don't take and retreats back, you'll lose the d4 pawn. So in the game, bishop c6 was played, and now bishop takes c6. There are three options here. Bishop takes c6 is not the best move. Queen takes c6 is actually the best move because it prepares b5 at some point. But in the game, bishop c6 was played, which is not that bad. And here in the game, knight e2 was played, bishop e7, developing the bishop. Now we just have a really normal game. b3, logical, defending the a4 pawn and also developing the bishop this way. And here, I want you guys to answer this question. If you are going to play here as with the black pieces, will you go castle? If so, short castle or long castle? And if you don't go castle, if you don't want to go castle, what should you play here? Well, in the game, black decided to go castle and play this really bad move, long castle. Now, I think even short castle will be much better than long castle, even though it gives whites the chance to go g4, but at least you still have the pawns all in front of the king to protect the king. But here, long castle was played. This is just something that is too risky. Just giving white the attack, gives white the chance to start launching the attack immediately on the queen side. Now, the best move here is actually to play bishop b4 to gain control of the dark squares, which is really normal, reasonable move actually, and probably at some point preparing for a short castle. However, in the game, long castle was played. This is just simply too risky, and now let's just enjoy how Nodirbek launched his attack and simply crushed black's queenside. He played bishop d2 first, very logical, preventing any bishop b4 ideas, and then threatening to go b4 at some point. King b8 was played. Well, now if you go bishop b4, there's definitely you can even just take on b4 and after takes, go knight f4 or something to swing the knight to c5. This position, white is just in a much, much better situation. Bishop d2 was played, and in the game, black decided to put the king to safety with king b8, and now b4 was played immediately, because now, of course, black didn't take on b4 because there's a5, queen b5, and rook b1 to win the bishop. So b4, b5 is coming. It is kind of it is just simply unstoppable. And then the game rook c8 was played. Still, it might be holdable for black with all the best accurate, with all the accurate moves here. And in the game, it turns out that Nodirbek also didn't play the most accurate move here. The best move for him is actually to go g4 to attack this knight. This knight has to move somewhere. Let's say it goes to h4, but now after takes, white gets to distract this bishop away from the action on the queen side, and now just simply pushes b5. And black can still try with bishop d7, but I think in the end, after bishop b4, bishop c5 is coming, bishop d6 check is coming. Also, knight c3, a5 ideas are possible. Even though the engine says that this is not an entirely winning position for white, but I think, just looking at this position without looking at the eval bar, everyone should say that, white is in a much, much better shape than black is. Alright, in the game, however, Nodirbek played rook b1. His idea is also really clear, to push b5 without giving up any material, but this is not that fast, and black has bishop d7 here. b5 was played, and here black should have just played a5 and just close up the queen side, and this is suddenly all fine because you have, if you go queen e1 to attack the a5 pawn, there's bishop d8 to defend it, and I think suddenly black is again back into the game because there's no counterplay anymore for white on the queen side. You can try rook c1, but then after just takes, black will be able to get the queen away. For example, queen c7 if you want to, or simply black can now start launching an attack on the king side. And also, if you just want to trade the dark square bishops off, you can go bishop b4 to get rid of this a5 weakness. and suddenly black is all fine here. But however, instead in the game, black decided to take on b5, but this is just a huge mistake. And now a takes b5 was played. Still, the engine suggests g4 as the best move, but a takes b5 is not bad. And here rook c4 was played, but then queen b3, okay, still g4 is good, but queen b3 was played in the game. Not bad. White is still doing really well here. I guess Nodirbek just wants to defend the b5 pawn and slowly start to put all of the pieces towards the queen side. And here g5 was played, but this is just really clear that this is too slow for black. Comparing to white's speed on the queen side, black is way too slow. And I mean, black has most of the pieces on the queen side, so it's really hard to start launching a kingside attack for black. In the game, h3 was played, but again, g4 is the best move. You don't really have to worry about creating issues on the king side, because like knight h6, for example, you just simply ignore it and play something like, well, if you want to keep the pawn, you can play h3, but you can also just, for example, play something like rook b2 to get the rook and doubled on the a file. Alright. In the game, h3 was played instead, which is a really calm move. Nodirbek is just doing everything very slowly but surely. And after h5, bishop takes g5. He is now gobbling up the pawns. Rook b4, queen a2, rook takes b5. And here, with all of the most accurate plays, Nodirbek finished this game off beautifully after knight g3, bishop takes g5, knight takes f5. It is important here not to take on g5, because then there's knight takes d4, and black is back into the game. And here, you just take on f5 first, and after takes, it is a knight versus bishop position. Black has the most horrible pawn structure that can ever be created, and this is just game over. Queen takes d4 was played. Okay, maybe black is still able to gobble up a few juicers, but eventually after rook a1, threatening queen a8, and then king c7, but it doesn't really work. Knight f7, gobbling up another juicer, rook g8, but no counterplay. Knight d6, rook b4, and finally after queen a5, queen b6, queen takes d5, another pawn, and then rook d8. Finally, the final touch, knight c4, and here black resigned simply because there's just no way to save the material. Here the queen is getting attacked. If you move to queen c6, you lose the rook after queen a5, but if you don't go queen c6, there are no more available squares for the queen. If you go here, that is going to be mate in two. It is just all game over, and this is round 2 where Nodirbek scored his first win in the Tata steel. And then let's jump into the next game, where this time he is playing with the black pieces against Max Warmerdam from Netherlands. And here he is already 2.5 out of 3. Well, actually no, but he is actually 1.5 out of 2, and this is round 3. He is with the black pieces, and Warmerdam started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and we have the roll Lopez. So I think you guys are really familiar with this, and no comments on all of these moves because they're all opening lines. And here, basically, this is all fine. And bishop c6, queen b1, queen e7, takes, bishop takes a7, rook takes a7. These are all really normal moves. This is just how you should be playing the roll Lopez. You guys can actually learn a lot of things. Black is just take a look at how both sides are rerouting their knights. White is trying to get the knight to e3 and probably get to f5 or d5. And here, instead of where sometimes you guys play g4 as white to start launching an attack on the king side, this time white is starting to launch an attack on the queen side, probably. And for black is going to get the knight to g6 or e6 and get the knight to f4, or even knight e6, knight c5. In here, knight d7, this is all actually just really normal chess. This is just how grandmasters should be playing. And then bishop c2, knight h6, knight hf6, knight c4, king g7. Okay, so both sides are re-coordinating their pieces and putting them where they should be. Rook a8. And here, I think, in my opinion, I prefer to play with the white pieces at this point because white has slightly bigger space on the queen side. Also, the knights are placed better than black's knights. White has slightly more counterplay. But however, the reason that white is not better because the e4 pawn is a huge weakness. It limits the bishop because it can't go to b3 because you'll just lose the e4 pawn. So of course, black is going to do all of his best to attack the e4 pawn, and of course not going to open up the queen side. And here, the game went on for another few moves, which is all very normal moves, and finally, knight e3. White is able to defend the e4 pawn with f3 if black is going to keep attacking it. This is all normal. Knight f6, b5. Okay, now the queen side is closed, and I think with accurate play, this should just be a draw because the queen side is now closed, and you just have to move back and forth. You don't really have any counterplay. Both sides don't have counterplay, and I think with accurate play, it will likely end in a draw. Bishop b7, normal. c4, normal. c5 is never possible because the queen and the pawn controls the square. Also, knight jumping to d5 doesn't really do anything because it is not considered as an outpost. Black can just trade the knight off. Here, knight d7 was played, so black's idea is trying to get the knight to c5 to attack the e4 pawn, but basically it doesn't do anything because there's just f3. And here, I'm not sure what's going on. Here, Warmerdam only has 5 minutes left on the clock, where Nodirbek still has 25 minutes left on the clock. It is a huge time advantage for Nodirbek, of course, but with only 5 minutes left on the clock, things start to, turned really fast. At this point, white has a small initiative because white does have knight d5, and black suddenly can't really do anything. f5 is not possible. The queen also pins this e5 pawn. e5 pawn could also become a weakness. But here, I guess, at this point, this game has already been going on for a long time, even though it is all positional play in the first 30 moves. But moving all of your pieces around, you still need to think. With all of these positional play, you also need a lot of calculation, and probably at this point both sides are kind of exhausted, and suddenly white made this blunder, and he played knight d5. Things were just turning so fast. At first, it was just a draw. It was always a draw, an equalized position. But then after knight d5 here, why is this a blunder? You guys can actually pause this video and think. This is a really tricky tactic. You see, now white's pieces are somehow uncoordinated because they block each other. And now knight d5 looks really reasonable because getting the knight to this excellent d5 square, also attacking the queen, forcing black to to take on d5. But Nodirbek now suddenly realized that actually I'm not going to take on d5. I'm not forced to do that. And here, he found this brilliant move, brilliant tactic. And can you guys see what this move is? The move is knight h3. And Nodirbek just spent a few seconds before realizing that knight h3 just simply wins a pawn. And he played knight h3, and I guess at this point Warmerdam is getting even more nervous because he has been playing so well in the first 30 moves, and it should have just been a draw. But then suddenly, he is under time pressure, and then suddenly he just blunders the whole game away. He is not losing, because he played this king f1 move, and the game is still probably going to be going on. But now black is just simply up a healthy, maybe not healthy, but black is just up a pawn. And black is suddenly creating a lot of pressure for white. Knight g5 was first played. Of course, you need to get the knight away. Rook a3, f6. The position is still pretty much close to equalization because black is up a pawn here that is simply useless, the c7 pawn. It can never be pushed, and it just simply equalizes like no pawn, and black, like both sides have the same amount of pawns. I mean, sometimes quality is always more important than quantity, and here it just shows why. Black is up in quantity, but the quality of the c7 pawn equals nothing. It can never be pushed because there's en passant, and c6 is controlled by 2 pawns. It's just like a terrible backwards pawn for black. And I think white is still going to hold the draw if he had more time. But the main problem here for Warmerdam is that he only has 3 minutes left on the clock, and things started to go wrong. First, he played king e2. Now his idea is probably just to get the king to the center and defend the pawns, and this looks fine, but then let's see how black slowly but surely started to create process. Knight c5, okay, getting the knight to this excellent outpost. King d1. Now we can see that Warmerdam is actually getting his king, trying to get his king to the queen side, but this is just unnecessary because I can actually understand that he wants to start pushing the pawns on the king side to create some counterplay, but at this point he is down a pawn afterwards. And for him, he just needs to move back and forth, and that is going to likely end in a draw. And sometimes, if you're trying to create counterplay, but you're not in a good position, you're not in a position that is good for you to create counterplay, you should just stay where you are. And now, moving the king just simply creates some huge weaknesses. Rook a8 first. White just wasted 2 moves with king e2, king d1, and basically did nothing. Now he played king c1, okay, following his plan. Rook a d8, g3, now he is threatening to go f4 finally. Knight f7 back, and here f4 was played. Now still the position is kind of messy, and it might likely end in a draw still. E takes f4, g takes f4, but here what he missed completely is this next move, rook d5. The rook on e1 it is unprotected. If you take on d5, there's queen e1. And black is up another pawn. Now at this point, both sides had just reached the second time control, and Warmerdam got an extra 30 minutes. But at this point already, the game is just close to over because he is down 2 pawns. Knight f3, trying to hold on. Rook h5. E5 takes, well, not takes, knight d7. Well, knight d7 is a small inaccuracy. The knight should just stay on c5 because it is a really nice knight on c5. Probably black just needs to play something like queen e6 to slide the queen into white's territory, and white will never take on e5 because like knight g5 just allows black's knight to jump in. I mean, the advantage is still not that big. But then after knight d7, white has an even bigger drawing chance with like here f takes e5, knight takes e5, rook d1. Then Warmerdam started to play a couple of excellent defending moves. Rook e1, just moving back and forth, king h7. But here, disaster struck. The only move here to still make it a draw, to draw this game, is to play king b1. Now suddenly you realize that you have moved your king all the way king f1, king e2, king d1, king c1, and then you have moved your king for so many moves, and then you just put it there, and then you just realize that king b1, move another move of this king, just draws the game. Just waiting back and forth because all of white's other pieces are placed on where they should be, and you just need to move the king back and forth. But this is just a move that is so hard to see, and queen c3 was played instead. This is the second best move, but then there's knight f6 and rook g1, another mistake, but who can blame him because he is under a lot of pressure after knight d5, bishop takes g6. But here, if black takes on g6, this is going to end in a draw because rook e7, queen c6, for example. I mean, this is going to end in a draw. But here, Nodirbek found the only move here to win the game and played king h8. And it's all over. This is white's last chance to trick black. And Nodirbek, of course, he didn't fall for the trick. And he played king h8. And now after queen d4, still the knight is under the pin. But then after knight takes e3, taking the rook, bishop takes h5, but then queen a3 check, and black manages to win the game with knight f5 because black is attacking the queen. There's no time for white to take on e5, and if white moves the queen anywhere else, black is going to give a really naughty check and win the game. Now, this is actually a really beautiful win by Nodirbek. He played a lot of great moves. As for Warmerdam, he defended really well, but just simply missed this tactic knight h3. But it happens a lot. I mean, it happens a lot when you don't have time and you're defending the whole game, the entire game. In the first 30 moves, I mean, these kinds of things happen. All right, now let's go to the next game where this is round 5. And Nodirbek is again with the black pieces, playing against Jorden, Van Foreest Jorden. Okay, also from Netherlands. And here he played e4. Okay, so Jorden here is with the white pieces, and Nodirbek with the black pieces, plays c6, and we have the Caro-Kann defense. Now I think this is an opening that it doesn't really happen a lot in top chess. Like the Caro-Kann, I think most likely black is going to start with e5. Like when two top grandmasters are playing against each other, e5 actually happens, is the most common move. But here c6 was played. This is a really unique opening choice. d4, d5, e5, bishop f5, and we have this really normal opening, bishop c7, knight g3 here. And surprisingly, Nodirbek here played bishop g6, which is not a terrible move, but not a move that the engine likes here. Black just needs to go short castle, which is preferred. But then bishop g6 was played, h4, and h6, another really bad move. h5 is preferred because just simply fix the pawn structure here and just don't allow white to play h5. That is black's idea. But however, in the game, h6 was played, and now black just simply allows white to push h5 with ease. Bishop h7. Now, I think you guys might be asking, I mean, this always happens in the Caro-Kann where just white pushes h4, h5, black goes h6, bishop h7. But at this point, you guys just need to realize that this is not the main line. This is not what you guys are all familiar with. Here, I think you guys all know this. This happens a lot. H4, and then here you go h6, h5, and then bishop h7 back. But this is just not the same line we're talking about. h6, h5, bishop h7, and here queen g4. The queen is able to get out to g4 and to attack the g7 pawn here. And now rook g8 was played, but then this just simply means that black can never go short castle again, and the king is kind of trapped in the center. This is a really bad position for black, and white is already in a very comfortable situation. Here, bishop e2 was played, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight d7. Well, I think in these first, here, Jorden should have played bishop e3, which would have increased his positional advantage, but instead he played, bishop e2, simply allowing black to gain a tempo because you move your bishop twice. You see, you get the bishop to e2, but then again you take on c4. That is two moves. Then why not just play bishop e3, and if black takes, you take with only one move. So that is the big deal here. But however, bishop e2 is played, not a really bad move. Bishop takes, knight d7, and we have a couple of normal moves. Here, Jorden decided to go really aggressive and played b5. This is not a terrible move, but he should have first of all take on f5, and after bishop f5, queen f3, and then prepare for b5 because the queen is now eyeing this b7 pawn. So white, I think, should prepare for a couple of more moves before pushing b5, because at this point, if you push b5, black has this c5 move, and if the queen was on f3, white will be able to take on b7, but at this point, white is one move slower. Knight f5 was now played. Bishop f5, queen f3. You see, this is just a mistake of the move orders. If you take on f5 first and then go queen f3, then push b5, black won't even be able to push c5 because there's queen takes b7. But now, at this point, it is black who is going to be playing. Black is going to make this next move, and black here played long castle. What a nice move by Nodirbek. Like, sometimes you just realize, okay, I'm attacking my opponent's pawn. How should you defend? Rook b8 defend it? Or, use a piece to defend it, but then suddenly you just realize that your opponent can go castle, use the king to defend it. Long castle. Now this might seem a little bit risky because, as we can see, all of white's pieces are aiming towards the queen side, but it turns out that the pawn structures are kind of fixed, and here you don't really have to worry about. Now Jorden decided to go like knight d5, but this is kind of way too aggressive. Here, white should just, prepare for the attack with rook ac1 or rook fc1 maybe. And just prepare for, just get more pieces into the attack. Knight d5 is too fast, handling things too fast. And then after e takes d5, bishop takes d5, threatening to go bishop b7 with check. Also, the queen is threatening the f5 bishop. But here, Nodirbek, instead of defending, like saving his bishop, he decided to play this brilliant move, king b8. Can you guys just play this move when you're in the actual game? I think 90% of us will just try to move this bishop somewhere. But if you just move this bishop here, well, bishop b7 comes here, and bishop a6, it is actually mate, forced mate. But even if you guys saw that the mate is coming, you might not even play king b8. Maybe you just take on d4 or something like that. And bishop b7 here doesn't really work because king b8, and you don't have the forced mate because there's now knight c5. But can you just play king b8? This is a really insane move. King b8, running away, giving back the bishop, but now knight takes e5, another really nice move. And now after d takes e5, rook takes d5, and suddenly after a couple of moves, both sides have traded off a lot of minor pieces, and the material is still equal, but we see that the e5 pawn is now suddenly a huge weakness, and white, a few moves ago, has a lot of pieces on the board aiming at black's king, but now suddenly has nothing. And the e5 pawn is kind of getting trapped. f4, defending the e5 pawn desperately, rook dg8, gaining full control of the d file, queen e4, this is a mistake. Here the computer suggests bishop f2 just to go back and probably open up this e-file for the rook to come to. But in the game, queen e4 was played, simply running into this pin and falls for the f6 move. And a4 was played, but now simply the e5 pawn falls, f takes e5, a5. But basically, as for black, you don't really have to worry about the attack on the queen side because white simply doesn't have enough pieces. Here, queen e8 was played, a very calm move. Because black cannot take on f4 yet because the queen is under this pin. But after queen e8, not only that does black threatens to take on f4 on the next move, but also threatens to take on b5. Alright, here b6 was played, a takes b6, a takes b6, bishop takes b6, and after sacrificing a pawn, actually two pawns here, white just realizes that there's no counterplay. Okay, he takes on e5, and here black cannot take on e5 because if you take either with the rook or the queen, there's bishop f4. But here black just plays bishop c7. Nodirbek just moves this bishop back, and again saying that the e5 pawn is trapped. Once again, bishop f4 was played, but then rook d4. Now, here, white should just push the pawn. Rook e5, but then there is queen f3. If you take on e6, probably there's bishop f2, queen a3 ideas. Still, it's kind of tricky. But after what has been played in the game, bishop f4, there's now rook d4, queen e2 back. But simply now there's this next move, rook takes f4, takes queen e5, and then in the rest of the game, no mistakes were made by Nodirbek. He played a couple of really nice moves, given one exclamation mark. Queen e3, bishop g3, king c6, king d5. Like if this were like king of the hills, like this would have just been winning for, like black will have already won this game. Like in that game, like black just, like the king just needs to reach the 4 squares in the center. But here, like what I'm trying to point out is that the king is just way up into the board, and it looks kind of scary because aren't there just any checkmating ideas here? But it turns out that there's just none. Queen b7 check, king c4. Black's king eventually ran behind its own pawns, and now white is just running out of checks, and black is threatening to take on f2 on the next move. Queen s7, okay, there's another check. But then after rook d5, finally blocking all of the checks, rook a2, but then you just take, and black is up too many pawns here. Up 2 pawns and 2 strong pass pawns, and then eventually after king b4, rook f1, rook d2, here Jorden resigned the game because no checks for white. Like rook f4 doesn't do anything because it just allows c4 to block, and if white doesn't do anything, queen e3 checks are coming. Even like mating ideas on g2 might be coming, and the pawns just need to be pushed. And with that, Nodirbek won the 5th game, round 5 of the 2025 Tata Steel, and now he is 4 out of 5, an excellent score for him. But there's still more games that are going to be played, and it's still unclear, like hard to predict who the champion will be, but at least we know that Nodirbek has a huge chance to fight for first place. Now, these are the 3 games that I am showing you guys today, and hope you guys enjoyed these 3 games as well as this video, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!